Okay, so for our final session of the day, which feels early to me because it's only 1 o'clock in California, but I know it's getting close to 5 o'clock for those of you on the East Coast. What we want to do is hear from you about what you would like to see from NATHPO. And to that end, oh, and Wes just reminded me it's only noon in Alaska. I always feel bad for the Alaska folk who have to get up at 7 in the morning when things start at 8 o'clock Pacific time. So sorry, Wes, but you have enough beard, I think, to get you through, any time you wake up. I'm loving everybody's giant quarantine beards. And I like to joke that, we get to see the men's beards, but none of the ladies are willing to show their legs to see how much, Anyway, so I mentioned in the chat that we are going to be doing something a little bit different for our opening poll. And I hope that this works for y'all. It should, but I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to be using a polling system called Menti. Some of you may have used Menti before, but it requires that you open a web browser and then you can answer the poll, but we will all be able to see on the screen what your responses are. So I am going to bring that up. If I can figure out where it is, there it is. So once I share it, just hold on a moment. Okay, so on your screen right now, you should see there's a question. It says, enter a few words that describe issues or needs you'd like NATHPO to tackle. And this will come up as a word cloud. So if you just think of 1 or 2 words, and you can enter as many different things as you want as separate entries. So you can put in something like more training, or you can put in more money, or whatever. But you have to go to this website that's showing at the top of the screen. It's menti.com, and then enter in that code 899073, and it will give you the ability to answer that poll. And as you start to get there, we should see the responses coming up. So there we go. Here's a few that are coming in. All right, good. This is working. Hooray. And I actually brought it up on my iPad, so I can throw some things in here too. Let's see. Good. See, now I hope you all are seeing that. That's what makes this a fun way to get real-time responses. So some of you in the chat are asking, where do you go? So I just put the website in the chat box, and then the code is at the top of the screen. It's 899073. This is great.
Yeah, so this is cool.
What's fun sometimes is that people, depending on how many people you have in your conference, you end up getting some really weird responses. Oh, and actually I see now that the way I set this up, you have to put 3 different responses in. Oops, sorry about that. I should have made it just 1. I'm learning this, so you guys are my guinea pigs to be able to do this. But I just threw in some things. But as you can see, the words that are the largest are the ones that are getting the most responses. Oh, I like GIS. I hadn't even thought about GIS in there. And I think what happens as everybody is looking at the screen, if you're not getting dizzy from all the words going all over the place, you think, ooh, that's something that I want too. So you put in funding, or you put in webinars, or you put in, I like that somebody put respect. That's great. Oh, Barbara Long put place names. That's a good one.
Stop nationwide PAs, I saw. That is a discussion that we plan to jump into.
Yeah. Mentorship, tribal code. Ooh, ground penetrating radar. Marnie put in the chat.
Consent versus consultation, sovereignty, NAGPRO. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, and I love that it's starting to slow down a little bit. So then you realize that people are coming to an end of their brainstorming. And if you let people brainstorm for too long, I used to do this with my students. I'd have them brainstorm on the words male and female to see what kind of stereotypes they had about men and women. And the first time I ever did it, I didn't put it on the board. And the first one was male. And then I asked him to share, and the first one raised his hand to share about the word male. And he was like, post office, letter, postcard. And I was like, oh, shoot, dude, male, like man. So I learned after that I needed to write on the board the word that I wanted them to brainstorm about. But as you guys can see, funding is staying in the middle. Training is staying in the middle. Consultation is staying in the middle. And now, but people like the GIS idea. It started out small. Now it's getting bigger. And we have a GIS
is getting bigger. Be sure and tune in for our first session tomorrow, same time as today, 11 Eastern, to hear about AGRA from our dedicated repatriation advisor, Tim McEwen, and about TCPs and landscapes from our board member, Lance.
So we've had 93 people, or at least 93 entries that have come up here. So it looks like we're coming to a stop here. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that. But I will be able to download this from Mentimeter, and so with the final results, I will save this as an image that I can share with everybody so that we can all see what our responses were. Ooh, Trump's policies. Can we call it something else? Can we call it Voldemort's policies? Because I really don't want to say his name. All right, I'm stopping the share now, so we're over with that. But thank you guys. I hope you liked that. I think that's a really fun and useful interactive way to get people to give their ideas. And anybody can have a Menti account, and like everything, it's free. But if you want to do the really cool stuff, like put a picture in the background or change things and customize, you have to pay for it. But the actual, I'll put it in the chat. Menti is where you go to do the input, but if you want to do an account, it's Mentimeter. So I just put that in the chat for folks who want to use that. But it seems like you guys liked it, so maybe I'll see if I can think of another one for tomorrow. But you can do open-ended questions. You can do polls like we did with Zoom, where you get to see how many people respond to each choice. So yeah, I'm glad you guys like that. So I'm just going to sit here and bask in my tech awesomeness. But in the meantime, I'm going to also highlight Julie and Melissa, because they are going to help us with this last hour and hearing from you guys. Because I promise I'll stop talking in a few seconds, but I noticed just that there's been a lot going on in the chat, but we haven't really had the opportunity to converse. And I know that's going to be hard with 241 people. We can't just all unmute ourselves and be, going over each other. But please put your questions, your comments, the things you want to talk about in the chat. You can also raise your hand, and we'll look for raised hands, and we can unmute those folks with raised hands. But Valerie, I'm going to kick it back over to you so that you can say more.
The folks haven't heard enough from me already today. I think the highlights have definitely been Walter Echohawk, and then Leah Brady, and now that we could probably let everyone have recess and head to the bar, but unfortunately we need to do this session. It's one of the main things that we're hoping to hear from you guys on, about NATHPO's new directions. How do we serve you? How do we support you? And we need you to help us with that, and not to play the agency card like so many frequently do, and have a meeting where tribes come and agencies tell us, how do we do consultation? I hope it's not coming across that way. But we're having a reboot with NATHPO, and so we want this input from you. And I'm going to turn it over to Julie in a minute. This is where she started helping me over a year ago, honestly, pro bono before we were able to pay her. And she puts on her marketing and communications hat, and she's got a real gift for that. And so she helped me see that what we're trying to do here is flip the script, be more inclusive, help tribes without a TIPO establish one, help tribes that aren't even close to that level, try to get to that level, build partnerships, and everything else that a highly effective nonprofit mission-driven organization does. And so this is the opportunity that we have before us, and I'm so grateful to have a team now helping us with that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Julie. We have 3 main topics in this session. So we're going to take kind of a tiered approach and see on the fly how the discussion starts to run. Logistically, we're going to ask you, what have you always relied on NATHPO for? What are our strengths, first of all? And we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to ask you, what else do you need? And that was kind of the purpose of that word cloud. That was so informative for me. And then finally, we're going to ask you about your ideal wish list. If anything were possible within our purview and the scope of what we do, what would it be? And I think I already know what I want one of those things to be, which is pushing the federal government on the UN Declaration. And how do we get agencies mandated to implement those articles? I also want to push a conversation on the National Register. Not any kind of rule changes necessarily, but I think it's safe to say it's the current structure and protections or lack thereof don't really work for tribes. They're not very helpful. So what's possible? How do we bring people to the table to have that conversation about what's possible to get to a place that would actually protect things that need to be protected? So I'm going to stop talking now. I'll turn it over to Julie.
Hello again, everybody. Thank you, Valerie, for that. So I kind of come to this with a third-party perspective, and I'm able to, look at sort of the broader picture and bring to light certain things. So I think what we're hoping to get right now is, NATHPO is an opportunity for us to unite, our voices so that they are more powerful, stronger. One of the words that I saw in the word cloud that really struck me was proactive, working from the, an offensive position rather than a defensive position. I think that this year has been a challenge for absolutely everybody. It has tested us in ways that we didn't know that we were going to be tested. Fortunately, we were also able to kind of take a look at what NATHPO is doing, has been doing, and what we get to do in the future, and have made some really amazing strategic changes. We're excited to hear today from you guys what you need. And again, together, my belief is nothing is impossible. So with that, I'm going to start with topic 1 and just kind of ask, what have you always relied on NATHPO for? What are the organization's strengths? And whether you want to raise your hand or you want to put that in the chat. Okay, so I see from Alina, we've always relied on NATHPO for advocacy on a national level and to keep TIPOs informed of major policy changes and new legislation. Current topics and policy changes. Have I missed anything? I'd like to see the issue of tribal fees brought forward to be addressed by the FCC, ACHP, and even higher if need be. And then I don't know if we want to allow people to kind of unmute, or if Valerie, if you and Shasta want to jump in and start to maybe field any of these with how you feel like we're moving in that direction.
I'd love to talk about FCC, not talk about, but say that that is very high on our list of topics that we will be picking back up this year. It has felt to me like they were kind of in a holding pattern, but we met with them, gosh, going on a year ago now, to let them know that the new status quo wasn't working for anybody. So again, how do we bring parties to the table who need to be there to have that discussion is something that we're planning to do.
Gotcha. I see there was a really interesting one. This is my first NATHPO conference, so a bit hard for me to answer, but advocacy would be very helpful. I think that there are lots and lots and lots of avenues that are we're definitely working on that. Valerie, would you want to mention that at all? Advocacy on a national level.
Oh, sure. That's one of the main things that we do, and that intersects with funding as well, because that's probably the point of advocacy that I spend the most time on, and I think that Bambi probably spent the most time on from one year to the next. And now that we hopefully will have less agency fires to put out on a daily basis as well, we can try to take some more creative approaches to advocacy for funding. But if there's advocacy on other topics that you would like for us to engage in, certainly let us know about that too. I think, law and policy changes that have been mentioned here proactively is certainly something we're planning to get into a little bit more.
Gotcha. We have some questions about template letters on different topics, and then sharing background research on pending legislation. One of the things that I think we should probably talk about in what will be coming in the future. We've been working on the website. We've run into a few glitches as you know, things go, but we're also working on a member management portal that you'll be able to hopefully go in and share different information. Our goal is to have that be a place where, you know, these letter templates and things like that would be housed, so that you can go in, you know, at will, as needed, as members, and you know, access those. And that might also be a place for sharing pending legislation and things like that. Valerie, do you have anything to add to that? Anything else you wanted to kind of mention about the member portal? Okay. Lots of advocacy, talking about definitely advocating. Then we have networking and collaboration opportunities. One of the highlights of NATHPO has always been having a room full of like-minded resource advocates. Absolutely. I think that, you know, this conference is, while we have to be apart safely, one of the really cool things about having a Zoom conference and having it be virtual is that everybody got to attend that wanted to attend. You didn't have to travel. So we're going to be working on things on a very regular basis so that we can, you know, have a room full of like-minded resource advocates. NATHPO and all of you would be most welcome at the Heritage Voices podcast.
Sean has a hand raised.
Sure. Okay.
Hi, everybody. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Shasta. Everybody's doing a good job. I really appreciate everybody. It's so good to see 300 plus people on this virtual conference. I think it's been really good information. But what I wanted to bring up, and this is I think it must be said, and it's very important because, you know, we have a new administration that we're all excited about. We may be having a good leadership in the cabinet for the Department of Interior. And well, we will have that after confirmation. I think now is the time to start looking at these federal laws, as NATHPO being in Washington, D.C., being a sort of lobbyist for us, but all the tribes across Indian country have a lot of lobbyists back east as well. So it's very important. I think that changing some federal laws that has been very disrespectful to us as Native people. And one of them is like the NHPA. I think that these laws, they've been disrespectful a lot to our Indigenous peoples. And the first I'd like to see is the change of the criterion that's science-based. The criterion is the A to D. If you guys all recall, this is all science, like A, there's associated with events. This is what archaeologists put together during their report, their cultural resource inventories. And I don't want to get into all of that, but changing the chronology, changing, what I would like to see too is archaeological terms, no disrespect to the archaeologists that are here. But I think that we've seen throughout this last year during this horrible crisis of the pandemic, but also seeing all the systemic racism happening, coming out, and what happened at the Capitol Hill, you know, seeing like that all needed to happen because we, America, the world needed to see how it's real easy to have non-natives, non-Black people, non-people of color get attacked differently than what happened at the US Capitol. So I just think that going back to archaeological terms, that is a big part of racism that's attacked our culture. So when archaeologists bring out their words, they've changed our common words or our language words to our cultural items, and they've put science terms on them. So I'm just thinking we have a lot to do. It's big. It's a big wish for me, but I think we could do that. I think we could do some really great things in the next 4 years, the next 8 years. We just have to keep going. That's just me, just running off the cuff. But I struggle with these federal laws when we're in consultation with all these federal agencies, federal and state agencies. I know a lot of you tribes across the country, you guys have changed a lot of really good state laws within your own country. We just heard the last session, well, the session about the Tribal Cultural Resource Law Handbook. Our tribe, the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, made some changes here in our own state, the outdated laws. We amended some outdated state statutes, but it is time that we as Native people, Indigenous people, through also what we just heard this morning through the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples, with Mr. Echo Hawk, that yeah, it's time to change these racist laws that that has put our people down. There's not, science is good, science is great. We're seeing that with the vaccine. We're seeing that with medical doctors. We're seeing all science. But it's hard for me to be a part of a collaboration of a science that uses that has made money off of our culture and that has made themselves, you know, a great lecturer, a great person writing books and so forth. But the science is trying to get to the truth. And we as Native people have to be a part of that. And I just think that archaeological terms need to be changed as well. Thank you, everybody.
Sean, thank you so much. You always have such a wealth of information. Michael, can we unmute Michael? He's got his hand raised.
Michael can unmute himself, yes.
Hi, everybody. How's it going? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, my name is Michael Kicking Bear. I'm the Deputy TIPO for the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation. We're a tribal community of about 1,500 people here in the state of Connecticut, so I'm East Coast. I guess I put in the chat already that we're having quite a number of challenges relevant to offshore wind. We are a coastal tribe, so East Coast in particular, they've chosen to be sort of the beta test site, I guess you could say, but it's a matter of putting steel in the water. And from everything that I've been studying so far, and I know we have other people on the call that are experiencing the same thing, we seem to have very few rights when it comes to the outer continental shelf. And so if I was to put a mark on a page for advocacy. We could really use some help in this space because it is typically the TIPO offices that are trying to, on top of all our terrestrial land-based work, we're now having to watch what's going out to sea, because this is really our submerged landscapes that have been relatively untouched with the exception of oil and gas development. And the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management is overseeing both oil and gas as well as renewable energy out to sea. And so they have chosen to go ahead and carve up the ocean floor and basically lease and rent it to developers without what I consider proper consultation with our tribes. And then on top of that, we have the limitations under maritime law relevant to what our actual rights are to tribal cultural properties out to sea. So that would be one area that I would love to see some advocacy and help from NATHPO on. Another one that maybe we could see in the future for, you know, be it a workshop or even another conference might be on the subject of data sovereignty. It's a growing concern, I think, for tribes when we obviously do rely on partners often, but much of our cultural knowledge in some cases are in electronic form. And we may want to sort of get our collective heads together and think about ways that we can protect that intellectual property, if you will. And then another area put in the chat room was possibly NATHPO developing a podcast. I have some experience in podcast development. And one thing to think about versus video is that podcasts and audio can be carried with people everywhere. I know a lot of us go out on the road and we're doing, you know, our surveys, and we're working with, you know, state and federal agencies in a variety of different areas. And while we're traveling, it's a great way to update ourselves as to, you know, the activities that NATHPO might be in, and of course, other TIPOs and what our challenges are. So I guess those would be the three things I would throw on the table really quick. So, and again, this was my first NATHPO, so I appreciate all the work everybody's put into this. And I thank you very much. And I'm going to shut up now. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Michael. That is amazing feedback. Thank you for joining us. We're so glad to have you here. And I want to respond to one of your points and then one by John Eagle in the chat box. And the first was about ocean-related resources. As it happens, I'm entering this in the chat box. In my previous life, I was the project manager for this project when I was at NOAA, which was funded by BOEM, characterizing tribal cultural landscapes. And there's three parts to it. There's one for agencies on relationship building, on doing business better. And there's one for tribes on gathering their own data and keeping that. The Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community of Oregon was instrumental in helping us develop that part of it. And the third part was a framework crosswalking NEPA and NHPA, and adding a couple of steps like managing for cultural values, and at the end of the process, if tribes aren't satisfied with the outcome, going back a couple of steps and trying again. So we've been trying to get some traction with that. I think a lot of people are aware of it at this point. ACHP is certainly aware of it, and it's very closely related to their early coordination piece that they have a paper on, and a free training online available as well. But I think as a nonprofit, NATHPO is really well positioned to keep pushing that and to look at things that we can do on all fronts, agency, tribal, and industry, to start implementing some of those things, since what we do is just really to lay out a framework. But the project, there's a link to the guidance document there. The project has a report in two parts. The second one has 3 case studies. We worked with Grand Ronde, Makah, and Washington, and the Yurok tribe in California. So Janine and Rosie, if you're still there, hi. And that, yeah, I think I've heard from BOEM that they're actually interested in picking that project back up again as well. So then having that model to be able to shop around to other agencies, I'm hopeful that we can continue to push that out. And the second question, let's see, I wanted to respond to John. Oh, about the programmatic agreements. Yeah, so this is a conversation that I have probably restarted, but it was new for me with ACHP lately, is about the role of tribes and nationwide agreement type documents. Since it's very clearly delineated in the regs what roles are and aren't for tribes, and not all tribes will necessarily have an interest in everything. And I think everybody here knows that lack of or slow response from tribes doesn't indicate non-interest. But the role of NATHPO in that is something that I'm trying to revisit as well, because unlike the National Conference of SHPOs, we can't sign on behalf of all of our members, let alone all tribes. It's a sovereignty issue for one thing. But if there were a different role for NATHPO that would be helpful to you guys on the subject of engagement and nationwide agreement documents, that is certainly something that's a fray I would like to jump into. So thank you for bringing that up.
And Sally Peterson has her hand raised. So Miss Sally, please unmute yourself.
Aminihi, Hinoni Kalektek. This is Sally Peterson. Many of you guys know me already, but I just finished up serving my tribe on tribal council for the last 15 plus years. I was honored to have that role. And I also served the tribe as the TIPO. And during that time, I really found that of all the tribal consultations that I was involved in and participated in, it was the consultations that involved cultural resources that were the most challenging for tribal council. And a lot of it had to do with education, just educating the parties that we were consulting with, and giving the viewpoint of the tribes. And so it got me to thinking about NATHPO. And of course, this idea is going to entail some capacity building and maybe some partnering with ACHP. But there really needs to be a component for training, and maybe even creating a NATHPO Institute where folks can go and apply and go through a training program, become certified, and maybe have two different tracks, one for tribes and one for agencies, and just really become an authority on education components. You know, I mean, this is all long-term thinking, but other organizations nationally have done things like this. And I'll give you an example, NAFOA, which is the Native American Financial Officers Association. And they've become a real organization nationally, and they've really got an ear to Congress. And they've really been able to push through a lot of legislation involving you know, tribes on a national level, and they've really strengthened their voice. And I would really love to see NATHPO do something like that and really strive for that authority in this field of cultural resource, because it is needed. There's so much advocacy that is needed to help tribes voice their concerns, because a lot of times agencies, there's a lot of folks within the agencies that have the right, I don't know, the heart, you know, they want to help tribes, but sometimes their hands get tied because of red tape or just policies by the agency. And those are all big picture things that need to be addressed in order to for tribes to really be effective. and to support tribes. And it's just an idea that I thought I would share. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Sally. And I sent a direct message to Katie McDonald to see if she wanted to talk about the training program that they're doing at Salish Kootenai College for TIPOs, which is something that the ACHP is also involved in. And, you know, Ira Matt, I think, was a big part of that, Valerie Hauser. So, you know, that's one thing that's being done, but that's, of course, not something that NATHPO is, you know, directly involved in, but it might be something that we could really learn from.
Yeah. There was a comment that ACHP will be launching an online intro section to section 106 for Indian tribes in about a month. So that might be a tag along to what you're kind of mentioning. I think as a team, we had definitely were looking at training and all kinds of training, all kinds of education as being very, very important for everybody. One of the themes that I kind of noticed in the chat was definitely you guys the information share here is amazing. And that's one of the things that we've wanted to inspire and, you know, kind of fan the flames of. I noticed in the word club, mentor was part of that. People looking for mentors, and there are tribes that know things that other tribes don't, and vice versa. And for us to be able to kind of help, you know, keep those conversations going and learn from each other might be really amazing. Let's see, what else do you guys?
So there was I got a response from Katie. She said she'd like to talk about their program at Salish Kootenai College. Katie, take it away.
Thank you, Shasta. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm actually a graduate from the Salish Kootenai College program for the Tribal Historic Preservation Department. We had started the program just on a whim. It was through Dr. Jeffrey Brindamer out of Connecticut. So when we had started the program, like I said, it was brand new, never done before. It definitely teaches North American archaeology. Dr. Brindamer had set up the program to hold us students at a graduate level. There was 4 of us females who had all graduated together. We were the first in history to do that. We were either members from the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes or the sister tribes of the Salish and Kootenai. So being a graduate from there and now sitting here talking to you all as the new TIPO for the Confederated Salish Kootenai tribes, it works. The program's amazing. I had a great time with it. I still talk to friends, family, and community members, anybody who's interested in cultural resource management, natural resources, but don't really know what steps to take, especially while going to a small community tribal college. I think that's a great step. Sometimes it opens doors for people who want to take more approaches towards the environmental law policies or heading over towards forestry. We all know that everything kind of coincides with each other, coexists. So it was a great program. I really enjoyed it. Last I knew is that the Salish Kootenai College is trying to turn it into a graduate level. So the school is slowly working on trying to get some graduate degrees coming out of the college. You had mentioned Ira Matt. I actually had worked with him my first few years as a technician, and when he had moved on with ACHP, you know, I just kept doing what I had to do for the tribe and kept going through, and here I am now 6-7 years later and still moving forward. So thank you, Shasta, for giving me the opportunity. And I see that someone had asked if there were any online classes for SKC. There are. I don't know their status, how they intake either full-time or part-time, but the school is definitely set up for virtual learning right now. So I think anybody who's interested to checking it out, there's great people to start getting in communication with, and feel free to check it out online. Thank you, Shasta.
Thanks, Katie. And please tell Mike Durglow I said hello. He's one of the best people ever.
Yeah. He's been our department head for 3 years, and he's great at, just getting us what we need and keeping us moving forward. His dad, Mike Sr., I really looked up to him when I first had started here at the preservation department with the tribe. So it's great to continue working with more Durglows.
I love that. It sounds like some sort of special colors, like instead of neon glow or it's the Durglow.
Very prominent family.
Website?
Yes. What's can you put the website for the college in the chat, Katie?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, you guys are so full, or I should say you folks, because a lot of us are not guys. You folks are creating some great ideas. I mean, I'm saving the chat here every 30 seconds just to make sure we don't lose any of it in case, there's a power outage or something, because I love these ideas. And I just wanted to briefly mention some of my thoughts, because I think a lot of you know I'm not just Paula's TIPO, I'm also the environmental director. And so in talking about some of the EPA stuff that's happening, we have, soon with confirmation, Congresswoman Holland as the Secretary of the Interior, but EPA is a separate cabinet position. And the person who's been nominated for that, Michael Regan from, I think, North Carolina, hopefully will also be confirmed. But something I just want a lot of us to think about, and I'm seeing it in the comments, is that the environmental and the cultural issues are not separate. And so for EPA, with a lot of the work they do with tribes, if you try to bring cultural resource issues into the fold, they get nervous about that. They don't, when you say we're worried about water quality, and you say part of the reason we're worried about water quality is because, the people are gathering basket making materials from the creeks. It's like, well, we don't want to talk about that. We just want to talk about the impacts on human health. So that's something else I would like to see NATHPO have more of an involvement with, is getting some of the environmental agencies, because all the rest are environmental. The BLM is environmental, Fish and Wildlife is environmental, Army Corps of Engineers, it's environmental. So let's stop having this artificial kind of colonial separation between the environment and the culture. All right, that was my little spiel. Looking through the chat, there's.
Do you see the comment from Lindsay Billiou? Is there a way that NATHPO can help sponsor or encourage tribal historic preservation courses at universities? I had the opportunity to take a historic preservation course while at the University of Oklahoma as a part of my Native American Studies degree, and that was taught by Dr. Joe Watkins. It would be great if we as tribes and NATHPO could come together to get this in place, especially in Native American studies.
Yeah. I mean, that would be amazing. Of course, it's going to be on every university has their process for getting things on the books. And I'm not doing it right now because I finally decided that 3 jobs was too much. And so now I'm just doing 2 jobs. But I taught at Cal State San Marcos here in San Diego County for 14 years in the anthropology department. And it can take years to get a new class on the curriculum. It has to go through a whole process. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't start. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. And I totally agree, like the University of Oklahoma's program, I'm actually in the middle of their Master of Legal Studies program, just because why not? I don't have kids, don't have a husband, I got nothing better to do. So getting a master's degree in legal studies, but they don't have a course on Native American cultural resource law. They have one on environmental law, they have them on religion, but nothing on cultural resource law. So this is a growing field, and for students who are majoring in archaeology or in anthropology and specializing in archaeology, in a lot of cases, they end up going on to careers in the cultural resource management field. And they need to be taking the classes that teach them about consultation, about the law, about, somebody said earlier, I think it was John Eagle, about data sovereignty. And that's another initiative. I'm the head of a working group with the EPA's Tribal Science Committee to develop a data sovereignty templates and things that tribes can use to have protections in place, very similar to a college or a university has with an institutional review board for doing human subjects research. So that way tribes can protect their intellectual property and protect their knowledge. And I hate to use a colonizing word like IP, but that's what it's called. I see that Rebecca Allen from United Auburn Indian Community is unmuted and hand up and hair down. So go for it, Rebecca.
Thank you. Yes, at Auburn, our local community college, Sierra College, we've been working with them to try to do something like a tribal historic preservation program specifically targeted for our tribal monitors to start with. So more of a fieldwork basis than language, but I'm just so excited to see this and to see the program from the Salish. That's just incredible. But the other thing, just to get an idea out there for folks, is we've also been able to work with Sierra College to get some of the basics like OSHA training, the Office of Safety and Health for training for our monitors, as well as hazardous materials training and HAZWOPER. So that way our monitors are getting college credit if they want it, but it's also a really nice way to partner with our local community college. So the information sharing here is really wonderful, and thank you all.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, we've got just about 10 minutes to go. And it's never enough time to talk about everything we want to talk about, but I do want to remind folks that we are meeting again tomorrow, and you will have more opportunities to provide comments and ideas. But it's warming my heart, because the last 2 years have been a challenge, to say the least, in trying to decide where we want to go and how we're going to meet the needs of all of our members and try to expand on our membership. And I know that in the past, there's some folks have felt like maybe their needs weren't really being addressed, and we don't want that to be the case. We want every single tribe to feel like NATHPO is an organization that they can get behind and can call on us to be there when you need things. That's what it's supposed to be about. We are a community. And and with all these wonderful ideas and all these great things that you all want us to do, I'm hoping that you can also help us make it happen, because none of this stuff is free. So that is something that we do have to keep in mind. If NATHPO is suddenly going to become the school of teaching tribal folks how to kick agency ass, then we need, some help with that. Just like students need help with, paying tuition, we need help to pay for the faculty. So that's something we would love to have people reach out to us with ideas about as well. If you have any fundraising ideas, if you are in a position yourself to be able to help us with that. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to turn this into, Jerry Lewis's telethon or anything, but and if there's any young people on the line, Jerry Lewis, Google him. Okay. Just saying. But we can't do this without resources. I'm sorry, that's just the real world. So help us with that too. And, we'll pay it back to you when we can finally meet in person. And, we just have like the giant NATHPO hugging party so that we all can, greet each other appropriately. And I don't even like touching people. That's how bad things have gotten, is that I even want a hug at this point. And I'm like, and I don't even like people. I like you people. I just don't like people. So Anyhow.
So on that note, I would mention specifically, I said earlier in the day that we've been able to repurpose some funds with existing agency cooperative agreements that we have, and we'll hear about a couple of those tomorrow. But that's also something that we can do to help not just support NATHPO, but use NATHPO as a conduit for supporting tribes if there's agency interest in getting some of this done too. That's something that we can do pretty easily. And of course, we're always in the market for donations, and we're starting to get some professional advice on bigger picture fundraising too, so that we can grow to the capacity that we need to really make some of this stuff happen. There's no reason we can't. We're perfectly positioned to do all of these things, and if this is what you need, this is what we need to be doing. So we appreciate you letting us know and helping us help you make it happen moving forward. And we've kind of been getting to topic 3, the wish list, the ideal wish list all along. But I'm gonna have to go retrieve my littlest coworker, and I will try to come back, but I wanna put that out there if there's anything else that folks want to pose as being on their ideal wish list that we haven't already covered.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff, I think, already on the wish list, which prompts me to click the save chat file again, just to make sure, because you guys have been just putting things in left and right, which is really wonderful. And looking at the chat, and we've even got volunteers. Sally said she'd be willing to volunteer. You know, Sally, I don't know if this is a Freudian slip or not, but you didn't say semi-retired. You said you're semi-tired. And I'm a little bit jealous of that because I'm not semi-tired. I'm full tired. But, you know, I think we're all, you know, semi-tired at least a little bit. But I want everybody to keep thinking about their brainstorms. You know, nothing is off the table right now as far as where we can go and what we want to do. And I know some of the ideas might be a little bit over the top, but nonetheless, what you do is you start with all your ideas, you know, and then we can whittle them down together on what our biggest priorities are. And that may be something that, if you're interested in this, that we can do as a future poll or a future survey, is we can take this list that you all have been so kind to help us put together and send it out and say, you know, pick your top 5, something like that, and just see what we come up with for helping folks. And again, you guys are going through the chat so quickly that it's almost too hard to keep up. But oh, Dr. Andrea Hunter says that she has created a few tribal courses, Indigenous Perspectives in Cultural Resource Management. That's great. Another thing I would suggest as well is that if you have the opportunity to present at your local conferences, to bring the tribal perspective, that's something that we've been fortunate to be able to do in California. So Rebecca Allen is the past president of the Society for California Archaeology, and that organization has been great about letting the California TIPOs come in and do presentations and talk to the archaeologists. Now, it can be a little bit like banging your head against a wall. I agree, but Rebecca pulled up her video so she can nod in agreement. And there's a little bit of a cynical line that I say, that to some degree we just kind of have to wait for some of the older archaeologists to quote unquote age out. And I'll let you go ahead and figure out what I mean when I say that. In other words, they won't be around forever.
Lord, yes.
Somebody unmuted themselves just so that they could respond and agree with that.
I would also say, Shasta, it was a matter of insistence and persistence that
Yes.
tribal folks come to the table, stay there, And Janet Eidsness, I see you up on the board there too, for the California Archaeology Groups. Janet's been promoting that for a long time, and it took a while, but I feel like we're finally getting there. But to stay there, we're going to have to insist.
Yes, absolutely. And I know that, obviously California is where I am, and we have 106 federally recognized tribes in California, and we have a monthly call with all of our, not just the California TIPOs, but from any tribe that wants to participate, where we talk about our issues. And I know that we're not the only region that does that. So that's something else to do, is to work together with your neighbors, in your region. And I'm looking to see if Lance is still on. Lance, don't you have a group out there that you guys have monthly meetings?
Oh, you mean the MTHPO, Midwest TIPO? What we did back when things weren't being very responsive for the middle part of the country, there was some fallout from how the way things had been done. So we had put together kind of a little group, at least to concentrate on some parts of the regional. And I would suggest that might be something else the NATHPO looks at, is look at some of the regional. I know California, you guys have done that because you have so many tribes there. But some of these issues we have, like transmission lines and pipelines and stuff, are specifically regional issues and multi-state. And that's something that I think that people should or could look at, especially some of these major projects or issues. We had that. Actually, I was going to try to have a in-person meeting, some training, but then we had the flood that hit the Midwest, and that wiped out our meeting place. And then, of course, the next season was pandemic. So we have yet to meet in person, but we have started a Facebook group. It's not super active right now, but anyway, it's something I think that people need to consider, that kind of a regional group.
Thank you, Lance. And just for anybody who's on Facebook, I know that we've talked about the NATHPO page and the page that was mentioned earlier about the saving sacred sites to being able to report vandalism and theft and that sort of thing. And Lance also has a Facebook page for his new Iowa National Park, which that's one of my favorite things when I get a little alert on Facebook that your friend Lance Foster has posted in Iowa National Park, and it's just animals and trees and sunsets and cultural teachings and beauty. And actually on that note, and I'm sorry I just monopolized for the last few minutes, but it's 2:00 in California, which means it's 5:00 Eastern. And I think Valerie's bringing us out beautifully by bringing her little president of household operations to her lap, so that we can see the future that we're all working for together, and also some really great fashion with the little ponytail that every little girl seems to have at some point in her life. So Valerie, do you have any closing remarks you want to give as we say goodbye for today?
No, just thank you again, everyone, for joining, for participating, for sharing your ideas with us and your voice, and to a lot of you for giving NATHPO another chance, to be honest. We're so excited about our new directions and our team and our members and potential members. If you're not a member, please go ahead and join us. We'll talk some more about member benefits tomorrow as well. And I think you can see that we've got a lot of exciting plans for this year, and we would be glad to have all of you on the team. And be sure and come back at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, if you're up to it. Refill your mug and join us tomorrow. We've got lots more exciting programming in day 2 for you.
Yes, and be sure to wear your red lipstick so you can have a nice grandma style lip print on your NATHPO mug. Thank you for giving me an excuse to wear makeup today. All right, everybody. Well, have a great night. We will see you bright and early tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Bye.